All right, guys, it can't get any better than this. Late night on a Saturday, talking some college football. So good to have all of you guys. We got 9 people in the chat, so I had about 7 people waiting earlier. And of course, prompt and right on time, Emperor of Rome. Good to have you, man. I don't think you've ever missed a single live stream, so always good to have you. Ryan Mel, Lame White, Comic Dude 45, Brandon, good to have you here. Go Alabama, go Yellow Jackets, go Rutgers, go Scarlet Knights. So, guys, good to have you guys. Good to have you on this late night, as I said, Saturday night. I think this is working out pretty well. I'm not going to lie. I think these later times are working out better because I know during the day it's a little more it's harder to do with work and everybody. I think everybody's out of school now, but work and other activities. So this is what we're going to try to stick with for now. But good to have you guys. Ryan Mel, go Dog, Cyclone Mitch, good to have you, man. Always good when you're on here too. I don't think you've ever missed a live stream like Comic Dude and Emperor of Rome either. I think they've been you guys have been the most consistent on being here. So always good to have you guys. Before we start diving into the college football talk, a couple housekeeping things I want to address, especially that we've got 8 or 9 people on here. Try to do the important things when we have the most people on the stream. But I want to say, if you have looked at our website, thegridironexpert.com, I want to make it clear that there is a difference between subscribing to the website and signing up for the newsletter. I've noticed that I get alerts all the time. We have a lot of people, guys. It's been overwhelming the amount of people that have signed up for our newsletter and for the expert picks. If you haven't done either of those, I highly recommend you do that. But you can sign up for the website and not sign up for the newsletter at all. So if you want to be on the newsletter, make sure you go down to the area that underneath the contact area and sign up for our newsletter. That's going to be really important there. And of course, we highly recommend you join the expert picks as well. We already have a handful of people there. I know Legalized Quack has already joined. I'm sure he'll be on here later, but he has joined the expert picks along with a handful of other people. So make sure you know the difference between subscribing to the website and signing up for the newsletter. But you guys can figure it out. If you have any questions, of course, you know where to contact me. So always good to address that. And I also want to make it clear also, tomorrow we will be dropping our preseason top 25. And I know that's something that a lot of people have been asking about, a lot of people that people want to see. So tomorrow afternoon, we will be dropping our preseason top 25. You certainly do not want to miss that. And then, of course, we all know what's going to happen on Thursday, predictions. The biggest time of the year for us here at the Gridiron Expert. I know one of you guys' favorite times of the year as well. So top 25 tomorrow. Predictions start on Thursday. Might have a live stream in between there. Of course, check Twitter and YouTube and you'll find out for sure. But just wanted to get that out of the way. Now we can finally start talking some college football. Now we can start looking through the comments and answering your questions and just bringing up some good old topics. I know Emperor of Rome will probably have some good trivia for us at some point down the road. But now we can really get into the fun. Just wanted to address that about the website and about what's going to be coming for the next week. So let's see here. I see it right now. Lane White and Ryan Mel already addressing the big-time loss of the big-time wide receiver at Georgia, Holloman, J.J. Holloman, or Jeremiah Holloman. That is a big-time loss for Georgia, who will now be without their top 5 wide receivers from last season. Now, the thing is, what people have to realize is Georgia has such a dynamic group of running backs that while this loss at wide receiver hurts because Holloman was going to be a veteran for what was going to be a fairly new slate of wide receivers for the Bulldogs, Georgia's still going to be fine. They still have a very talented quarterback in Jake Fromm. They still are going to have a very talented group of running backs. DeAndre Swift is still going to be there for them. I'm not too worried about it. I'm not too worried about that loss. It hurts, especially getting that close to the season. We're in the middle of June now. We're getting close to the season. Practices starting back up in August, so that is a hurt for the Bulldogs, but I think it's going to be fine. So I did want to address that. That was a big time announcement that's been made. Another big time announcement is going to be the fact that I'm sure you've all seen that UConn, Connecticut, might be leaving the American Athletic Conference. It was announced that every other athletic program at UConn was going to be moving to the Big East. So in basketball and baseball, everything that UConn has will be moving to the Big East. Of course, there was no Big East in college football. There used to be, but they're going to be dropped from the American Athletic Conference. So, and thank you, Comic Dude. So that's already been confirmed. So they're going to be leaving. Where will they go next for football? There's rumors that they could go to the Conference USA. There's Now there's one that could be the MAC. Maybe they're going to be independent, but UConn's going to have to find themselves a new home for Division I football, and they have been irrelevant for a while in the American Athletic Conference. Every now and then they're able to crack a 6 or 7 win season. A couple of years ago, I say a couple, almost a decade ago, 2010, they were playing in the Fiesta Bowl against I think it was Oklahoma. So they've had their moments, but as of late, it's been brutal if you've been a Huskies fan. So, but that was one of the bigger news stories that came out of today. All right, so now we're going to dive into the comments here. I want to see what everybody else has got going. Still talking about, I know Uncle Lou, I see that Brandon Comic Dude saying that Uncle Lou is rage quitting because of the loss of Holloman. We all know that he's a big-time Georgia fan, and Uncle Lou much more dynamic and much more out there than I am, and maybe some of the other analysts you've seen in terms of his style. But it is extremely fun to watch, no doubt. Nona B, is good to have you, yes sir, Mr. Gridiron X After Dark. We're here, man. We're ready to go. And like I said, Nona, you weren't here at the beginning, but I think we're going to try to keep up these 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock live streams. I think they're working out pretty well. We're getting pretty good amount of people coming in. Great discussion. Last time we did this on Tuesday, we had an hour and a half long live stream, and that was because you guys were so good at participating. We had so many good topics, we just didn't want it to end. So, but no, good to have you back on here. I think you missed the last one, so we're glad to have you back. What else do we have here? Cyclone Mitch, Brock Purdy at Iowa State. You think he's going to throw some dimes to the Michael Petway, the big-time transfer out of Arkansas, transferring over to Iowa State. And that's a big-time get for them. Petway was going to be good for the Razorbacks. He had that height, had the speed, was going to be able to be a deep threat for the Razorbacks. But, of course, last year was such an abysmal year for Arkansas, going 2-10. They didn't have a quarterback, and if I was a wide receiver, I think if I am a wide receiver at Arkansas right now, I still have a lot of questions at the quarterback position, because last year was horrible at Arkansas with Ty Story and Cole Kelly in the mix. Now they have Nick Starkel and Ben Hicks. Neither of them, I think, have proven themselves to be, a major change and a major step in the right direction. It'll be better than what they had last year, but Purdy, by far, a better quarterback than any of the 4 quarterbacks I just listed at Arkansas. And that's going to be a huge get for the Cyclones, who are trying to break through and maybe a bit of a spoiler, reaching the Big 12 title game. I've said repeatedly, I think they are the 3rd best team in the Big 12 behind Oklahoma and Texas, but they could have a very major role of who plays in that Big 12 title game, or maybe ruining Oklahoma or Texas's chance at a title in the Big 12 or a chance in the college football playoff. So Iowa State, people slept on them a little bit 2 years ago, absolutely 2 years ago. They slept on them a little bit last year. No one is going to sleep on them or overlook them this year. MCD Sports 4, good to have you, man. I'm glad to have you back. And Legalized Quack, just like I think Romic Dude said, you were right on cue. We had just mentioned you a second ago. We were discussing the website. So good to have you here on the live stream. Lane White, so you got a quick question. Joint prediction for Georgia Tech. Lane, let me tell you what, Lane. Why don't you send me an email? Why don't you send me, if you got the email address, thegridironexpert@gmail.com. Shoot me an email and we can discuss that, no doubt. I know last year we did a collaboration with College Football Dojo. Good friend of mine, knows about Iowa football, knows a lot about him. I've done collaborations with some other YouTubers for predictions or analysis there. Did some on Instagram last year as well, which also, another housekeeping thing, we are now on Instagram, just like our Twitter handle. It's at Gridiron Expert without the. So go check us out there. We haven't posted anything yet. That just happened yesterday, and obviously it's very slow going, but if you're on Instagram, go check us out there for plenty of more updates and analysis as well. So we're on all the platforms now, except for Facebook, when not many people use Facebook. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we've got a website, we're on YouTube. You can't say you can't find us because we're there. But Lane, send me an email, man, and we can definitely look into that. I'm always looking for new opportunities and new takes. So let's see here. Who else we got? Drew, good to have you, man. Weekend's going great. Hope the same to you. Hope the same to all of you guys. Hope you've had a great and safe weekend. Got one more day left where we got to get back to work on Monday. But no, it's been great. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of resting, but at the same time, a lot of work being done. So we have a lot of prep to do going into next week. So let's see. Yeah, Emperor of Rome leaving the you leave YouTubing to the experts. So, but yeah, 'cause I think someone was mentioning about your trivia there. Yeah, should make a college football trivia videos on his channel. So hey man, you've got the knowledge and the analysis to make it happen, Emperor of Rome. If you want to do it, have at it. You know I'll support you. I think everybody else here would do the same. But we enjoy having all of your trivia that you're able to bring to each and every live stream. No, no. Will I be attending any Power 5 games this year? Yes, actually, a handful. And if I can, guys, I'm gonna do my best when I'm at those Power 5 games to do some analysis there, right from the stadium, whether it's pregame or postgame, whenever it may be. I will definitely do my best there. And of course, if you looked at the website, you saw there was a tab there talking about on-site predictions. And I can't say where we're going this season, but I can tell you we are going to a lot more stadiums and universities this summer. So during prediction season, we will be at a lot more universities and stadiums there. So if you're getting antsy during prediction season, like where's my team? Do this team next, and maybe we haven't gotten there yet. You never know. Maybe that could be where I'm going next. So we have a lot of teams lined up that we're going to be. Maybe some exclusive interviews lined up. We're still working on those, but the on-site predictions are coming, and I will be at a handful of Power 5 games, Nona. No doubt. And which it's always a blast. You know, one of my favorite things is tailgating. Believe it or not, you know, I love going to the game, love watching the game, but it's what you do before the game and even after the game that makes it a lot of fun. You know, if you can get a nice 6:30 game, you can tailgate all day before you go into the stadium to watch the game, and that's one of the best things about college football, regardless of where you go. Some schools and universities have a better tailgating area and tailgating atmosphere. Like I will say that Ole Miss, for example, the Grove is a phenomenal place to tailgate. Has that great atmosphere both pregame and postgame. It's a fun place. I know Texas A&M down at College Station, that's a lot of fun. Regardless of where you go, each school has their own different tradition, own special area that is kind of known to the locals and known to that university. But that's one of my favorite things to do. Without a doubt. Ryan, am I a fan of any other team than Arkansas? You are a Georgia fan first and foremost, of course. I think we had a technical difficulty, guys. I think we're back on. I think we're back on. We're here now. So I'm sorry, Ryan. We had a little technical problem here, but one for each of the Power 5 conferences. I don't have that. I will say, yeah, sure. I root for Arkansas. I've always been. Since I was young, a Baylor fan. I support Baylor, so I was very upset and disappointed to see what happened with Art Briles and how Baylor just kind of crashed after that whole scandal they had going on there. But no, I don't really have one that I can just get super passionate about. You know, I stick with that one team, and then I have a handful of teams that I hope they do well. But when I say that, there's usually a lot. You know, I tend to root for the teams or support the teams that have struggled for so long, and now they're kind of up and coming, or maybe they're doing well. So I don't have a specific one. Yeah, sure, Arkansas State, Cyclone Mitch making a point there. That's where I go to school. So, I kind of have to support them. I do go to their games. I do hope they do well, no doubt. But it's not something that I'm extremely passionate about. Although I'm going to be doing a lot of coverage for them this season. And if I'm lucky, I'll be able to take that coverage and bring it here to the Gridiron Experts. So I know it's going to be Sunbelt, but it's better than nothing. I know it's not a Power 5 school. It's not like I'm covering a game at Georgia or Alabama or something. But any college football coverage, I think, is better than none. So Trey Drew, what's my favorite conference to cover? It depends. If you're referring to coming to, it's not much, but it's home. I guess you could say that. But what's my favorite conference to cover? If you're referring to just predictions, I would have to say it's probably, and no bias whatsoever, but I would have to say it's the SEC. And the reason I say it's the SEC is because of the way of how difficult that conference is to predict and how well that conference beats up on each other. We talk about that all the time, how strong the SEC West is. We mentioned that Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M are probably your top three this year. You've got Auburn in the mix. And then you've got your kind of, I wouldn't say bottom dwellers. Your bottom dwellers are certainly Ole Miss and Arkansas. Mississippi State's usually in there a little bit. But the East is even being more competitive this year than it has been in years past. You've got Georgia and Florida up there at the top. Missouri is a team that could surprise people with Kelly Bryant. So that is going to be something that people need to keep an eye on. Tennessee is up and coming, could very well win 7, maybe 8 games. Kentucky, not going to match their 10-win total they had last year, but could still win, go back to another bowl game. South Carolina, tough schedule, still going to be all right. And then Vanderbilt, I would say they're the dweller of the East, but even last year they almost won their bowl game over Baylor. And their offense seemed to be going in the right direction. And now they have Riley Neal, the transfer from Ball State. Now, I'm not saying he's an elite quarterback by any means, but they lose Kyle Shermer, and now they're bringing in another veteran, so they shouldn't lose much of offensive production, especially with a team that is primarily known for their defense under Derek Mason. So I would say that just because of how fun and unpredictable it is. And then second, I would have to say Big Ten, because I think they're the most similar to the SEC in that regard. Walter M, 529, a big-time Notre Dame fan, but it's good to have you, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate the comment, being on College Game Day. That is the ultimate goal, is to be we've already addressed this. You've seen the videos. You know the goal. You know the plan. But get up there, work for Game Day or ESPN, somewhere around there, and analyze games for them. I look around sometimes, and I think that I don't think I do too bad of a job there, giving some insight. But I hope we go to the Notre Dame Stadium too. If I'm there, I will certainly let you know. I'll certainly give you a heads up. If you can actually sign up, the best way to communicate with you guys is to meet up somewhere. If I'm ever going to be in your neck of the woods or at your university or your program, sign up for that mailing list, guys, because I'll have your email address and we can go from there. That's how important that is. That's not me trying to bolster it or trying to promote it that much. It's more so it's going to benefit both of us. So I highly recommend you do that, Walter, because I'm sure sooner rather than later I will be up in South Bend, up for a Notre Dame game or for a Notre Dame visit, because I actually do know quite a few people up there. So, yeah, I would love that. Comic Dude doing a little plug of his own, highpoint.com. Highpoint.com Stadium to do predictions. You have to meet me there. Well, I would love to go out there and do some predictions over at Rutgers. And if I had known, I would have tried to do that while I was up in New York a couple weeks ago. But unfortunately, that didn't work out. I wasn't over in New Jersey. I was over in New York, and then went down to Connecticut, and then went up to Canada. So, but if I'm ever there, I'm gonna be there. I will be there, because I know you're even a student there, and I hope things are still going well for you in terms of the marching band life. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and they just started their marching band season. They do it. I know. He's starting in the summer, long practices, just like some of these football programs do. Marching band is absolutely no joke. So I hope things are still going well there. It's a lot of fun. I was in it for a couple of years in middle school and the beginning of high school, so I know what it was like. But yeah, man, if I'm over in New Jersey, I'll be there. I will certainly be there. Let's see what else we got here. Theodore McIntosh, hey, good to see you, man. Yes, I'm going to keep predicting against the spread and totals. I appreciate that. Theodore, if you are still on the line, I hope you are. First off, I want to welcome you to the Gridiron Expert. I know you've been here before. You've watched us before, but I haven't seen you in the live stream in a while, so welcome here. Theodore, if you go to thegridironexpert.com and you sign up for our expert picks, you will get all of our against the spread picks that we do this season. So that's over 150 spread picks for the entire college football season. That includes bowl games. That includes the postseason. So we will not be doing against the spread picks here on the channel. We will not be releasing them on Twitter like we did last year. It's solely going to be if you sign up for our expert picks on our website. Now, playing predictions, like we've done in the past, we will be doing every single team here, no doubt. That's not going to change. That's my favorite time of the year, and I wouldn't charge anybody for that or take that away from this channel, take that away from you guys. But against the spread, obviously much tougher than straight up, I would say, in some people's eyes. That's solely going to be on our website. So Theodore, if you're still here, go sign up for that over at thegridironexpert.com. And I highly implore anybody else that's on here, if you're interested in our spread picks, go sign up for that. It's one-time fee for the entire year. Very, very low, if you ask me, for the amount of games you're going to be getting and the amount of content you'll be getting. So go check that out. Definitely worth it. So Theodore, that's where our spread picks will be. But if you're just looking for straight up win totals, it will be right here starting on Thursday. Walter, do I think Corso will be there by the time I get there? I am highly doubting that. I'm a huge fan of Lee Corso, and every year I fear that that's going to be the last with Lee Corso. Not because of a horrible, but I feel like he's going to be retiring very, very soon. He's so entertaining to watch. He has been, in my opinion, the face of College Game Day. People watch College Game Day from 8 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock when the first games start. But the most exciting part of College Game Day, in my opinion, is those final 10 minutes when they are predicting the day's biggest games. And then, of course, Corso does his headgear pick. That's what everybody looks forward to. That's what everybody in the crowd, I mean, it's a big deal for game day to come to your school, to come to your city. But to see Corso hopefully don your team's headgear, that's such a big deal and such a really cool experience. And I feel for the schools that haven't hosted game day yet, because they may never get to experience Corso picking their team. And that's a darn shame. But there's a lot of schools, even in the Power 5, that haven't even hosted before. Maybe that'll change this year. Maybe that'll change in 2019. We'll get to cross a couple off our list. I know last year, Washington State and Pullman, they got to go. That was the first time they had hosted game day. And Washington State made sure to show out in that game. I think that was against Oregon, and they took care of business. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be there when I get there. But hey, fingers crossed. Maybe I'll get lucky. Legalized quack going to Notre Dame versus USC this year in South Bend. Wow, that's a big time game, and that's pretty big. So you're just all big Pac-12. You're all Pac-12. So even though you're an Oregon guy, certainly be rooting for the conference. I know a lot of people that are like that. I know a lot of people root for all SEC, whether it's in the postseason, regardless of when it is, where it is. As long as it's not you beating up on my team, I'm going to root for my conference. So. So yeah, that's pretty cool, man. I gotta tell you, Legalized Quack going all the way to South Bend for that game. That's gonna be a fun game too. I think Notre Dame will take care of business. They're certainly now on paper the superior team to USC, who has a coach on the hot seat Helton over at USC. If they cannot get to a bowl game, or even if they only win 6 games, there was a very good chance Helton could be out. And you can bet your money that the administration at USC is talking a little bit to Urban Meyer right now about the potential of hiring him if Clay Helton does not meet expectations. I think, honestly, and I don't know if we have any USC fans on the line, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would be okay losing, having a losing season or just barely making a bowl game if that meant firing Clay Helton and getting Urban Meyer back into the coaching game. And that's not a guarantee. Everybody said, Urban Meyer's even saying that he's done coaching forever. He's done. The odds of that, though, I think are very, very slim. I'm not a young coach, but he's still got plenty of time left before he gets the retirement age, that I think he really wants to get back into coaching, and USC is going to be the place for him to do that. And someone made a very good comment. They said, if Urban Meyer somehow did take the USC job, his first game with the Trojans would be Week 1, 2020 against Nick Saban and Alabama. So what a way to kick off at your debut with a brand new school than going up against probably the best coach in college football right now and one of the most dominant programs over the past decade. So that would be pretty awesome if that happened. Still, we don't know if that's going to happen yet, but Clay Helton's on the hot seat. Notre Dame, you can almost mark down as a loss. Not going to do it yet, but it's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out with Clay Helton and the Trojans in 2019. Let's see who else we got here. Mark TR, you are the one that's always want me to get one of those turnover chains, man. You send me a turnover chain, I promise you I'm going to wear it. Promise you I would wear it. But can Miami win with Tate Martell or N'Kosi Perry? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely they can. Phil Steele, if you guys follow him, I'm a huge proponent of Phil Steele. I think he's one of the best analysts out there. He's got Miami ranked in the top 5, I think number 2 of his surprise teams entering 2019. And when he says that, when he says surprise teams, that's a team that could drastically improve on their record from last season. And Miami won, 8 games last year. I'm not saying they're going to be back to their old self, winning, getting up to number 2 in the country, trying to vie for a spot in the college football playoff. But I think Tate Martell is the quarterback. And we talked about this last live stream, that Tate Martell, I think, is the best quarterback on the roster for the Miami Hurricanes. Now, I know he had a horrible spring, but I think he's the best quarterback on the roster right now. Dan Enos, I can't stress it enough how good he is at transforming quarterbacks and just transforming an offense, period. So Miami is not going to see a drastic drop-off, I think, in any side of production. I think they can improve this season or stay about the same as they were last year. And I think if they win 8 games in 2019, I see your comment, Mark, at maybe 10 wins. How's that sound? I think that's a little too high. You're still looking at a division that I think Virginia is the favorite in right now. You're still looking at a conference that is Clemson's and only Clemson's. There's no team in the ACC that can challenge Clemson, maybe except for Syracuse. I know that game is going to be in the Carrier Dome. That is the only team in the ACC that I think could really challenge Clemson this season. But Miami, I'm not saying they can't win their division. That game against Virginia is going to be huge for them. But I don't think 10 wins is a realistic possibility. I still think the defense will stay strong, and maybe next year that could be the case for Miami because I think Manny Diaz is the right man for the job. But I don't think 10 wins is it. I think Miami's needs to certainly hope for bowl eligibility. Anything less than that would be very disappointing. But 7, 8, 9 would be amazing in year one under Manny Diaz. But they're going in the right direction if they retain their coaching staff going into next year. You can see Miami starting to threaten for that division title and threaten to get back into the national stage and national relevancy. But I think that's where they're looking at. But yes, Mark, they can win. There's no doubt. That was your original question. I went off track there. There is no doubt in my mind they can win with those quarterbacks, without a doubt. Lamar Stevens, hey, you were in Canada too, man. Hey, it was a really cool place. Yeah, it was beautiful. Checked out St. Andrews, St. John's, Nova Scotia, places up there. It's a really neat place. Hey, and Mike Myrick, I see you. You joined the chat. Good to see you, man. Go Noles as always. Happy to have you. Let's see. Taylor Lewis, what do I think of Neil Brown at West Virginia? I was listening, guys. A good friend of mine, as you know, in Emperor of Rome. I see your comment right after Taylor's, and I'm gonna take a look at that. Good friend Mark Rogers, guy I work with, respect for him. I actually got to meet with him. He's obviously way outside of Arkansas, but when I was able to go up to Bristol around that area, I got to see him and meet with him for a little bit, and that was really, really cool. But he was talking about Neil Brown yesterday in West Virginia. And they think it's a good hire. And I will say I was very, very skeptical, Taylor, when they announced that Neil Brown was going to come over from Troy to take over for the Mountaineers. I thought, he did great things with Troy. He beat Nebraska on the road. He beat LSU on the road. He won all of his bowl games. He was a dominant force in the Sun Belt, and his offenses were extremely, extremely tough to stop, especially with Brandon Silvers at quarterback. But now coming over to West Virginia, he did get very lucky by inheriting Austin Kendall, the transfer quarterback out of Oklahoma. So when you lose a guy like Will Grier, who I was so high on, who was one of the better quarterbacks in the nation last year, then you lose one of his top receivers in David Sills, you wonder, new head coach, he's going to have to rebuild this offense, especially for an offensive-minded coach, from the ground up. He's not going to have to do that this season. He's going to get a quarterback that does have some experience in the Big 12. Even though Austin Kendall was never the starter at Oklahoma, he did learn under Lincoln Riley. He did learn under two of the past Heisman winners in Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield, and that's going to be a huge boost for them. Neil Brown is going to, in my opinion, be very similar to Dana Holgorsen in the sense of his success and the results he'll produce, but I don't see West Virginia in the next 2 or 3 years contending for a Big 12 title like they were last year. Had they beaten Oklahoma in that season finale, which was an absolute thriller, I think they would have gotten into the Big 12 championship game, and I don't see that happening yet. But I do think if you give Neil Brown time, he's going to be the right man at West Virginia. And I know I say that a lot, but this is one that I truly believe. I'm always skeptical when a coach takes such a huge leap. When a coach like that takes a huge leap from the Sun Belt all the way to the Big 12. So you're going from, I know Group of 5 to Power 5 transfers happen all the time. Coaches going from Group of 5 to Power 5 happens all the time. But that's a big jump. But Neil Brown proved that he can win with a Group of 5 team in some of the toughest environments in the Power 5. And that's going to bode him and his team well, because it's not just the coaches that are doing that. It's the fact that the players are buying into what the coaches are selling. He did that at Troy. He can certainly do that at West Virginia. So Taylor, it's a good hire. You in West Virginia just have to be patient with him. Emperor Rome, yeah, I guess I did miss your comment earlier. We were talking about teams. Of course, by your logo, by your profile, of course, obviously an Alabama fan, but you also like Michigan, Colorado State, and Penn State. Okay, so very diverse group there, I gotta say. So you got 2 Big Ten teams and a Group of 5 school in Colorado State. And if you don't mind me asking, I'd like to know why you've got some support for the Rams. Nothing wrong with that actually, but it's intriguing when you've got 3 major Power 5 schools there. But Michigan and Penn State, 2 teams alongside Alabama that can compete for a spot in the college football playoff this year. Michigan probably more so than Penn State. Penn State, especially if you've noticed, had a horrible month on the recruiting trail. Lost some key players a couple of weeks ago, as we all know. They lost Tommy Stevens, a guy I thought could have been quarterback a while back. He transfers down to Mississippi State. So they're going to have James Franklin's got his work cut out for him this year. This is not going to be the Penn State team that we saw last year. This is not going to be the Penn State team that we've seen over the past couple of years, but it's still going to be a Penn State team that no one should take lightly, and a Penn State team that could remain a big-time threat in the Big Ten. So even though this is the year that everybody thinks Michigan can win it all, the Big Ten, we're talking win it all means the Big Ten, or maybe Ohio State still as the king, Penn State is a team that no one can afford to overlook. Will Burrow, good to see you, man. It's been a while since you've been here. Hope your trip to over, I think, to the Netherlands and France, Amsterdam, hope that went well. But who's going to start at Arkansas for a quarterback? And I can tell you how it's going to go down. I'm 90% sure this is what's going to happen. If I were Chad Morris, Ben Hicks will be the starter. Christopher Smith, what's going on, man? Good to have you. Good to have you. But Ben Hicks will be the starter in Week 1 for the Arkansas Razorbacks, because Ben Hicks has the relationship with Chad Morris. We all know, Chad Morris coached at SMU. Ben Hicks was his quarterback. Ben Hicks was the quarterback for SMU last year when Chad Morris took over for the Razorbacks. Now he is transferred. So they have that understanding with each other, the relationship with each other, having coached under him or coached with him. But now you have that relationship where Ben Hicks understands the offense that Chad Morris is going to try to run. So that's why he will start there. Nick Starker will finish the season at quarterback for the Razorbacks. So, Will, there's your answer. Ben Hicks will start. Starker will finish. I think, judging from what I have seen and what I have heard, that I believe Nick Starkel is the better quarterback for Arkansas. Starkel has experience in the SEC, having transferred from Texas A&M. I think he is the right man for the job. And I think Chad Morris will quickly realize that is the case. And when you're coaches, you can't play favorites. People do it. Coaches do that. But Chad Morris will realize that even though Ben Hicks is a product of my system, is a guy that I have coached before and understands my offense, Starkel is going to be the one that's better for the job and our best chance to win. So Hicks will start, Starkel will finish. That's your Arkansas quarterback situation. Hicks will leave after 2019, and it will be Starkel's show to run in 2020 for the Razorbacks, unless something unforeseen happens in Fayetteville. But, Will, there's your answer there. Walter, you were at the Notre Dame-Stanford tailgate, not the game, in 2012. Got to experiencing Lee Corso pick Notre Dame in a leprechaun suit. So that in itself is a scene that I would never forget, and a moment I would never forget. So that is pretty amazing. And I love it when Corso dons the headgear all the time, but when he dons the full-out costume, that sometimes makes it even better. I've seen him in the leprechaun suit. He's done some colonial gear when he's going to like James Madison or something like that. Statue of Liberty when they did College Game Day from New York a few years ago. He's certainly a very entertaining man to watch. Trey Drew, what is the best game I've seen in person? So a game that I've actually attended. Whew, that's a tough question. It's not very often that I go to many games that are without my team being involved, of course. So being an Arkansas guy, I've been to a handful of Arkansas games, and I can gladly say that I wouldn't say gladly, but one of the best games that I've ever been to in person was the 2011 Sugar Bowl. That was between Arkansas in Ohio State. And that was the Ohio State team led by Jim Tressel and Terrell Pryor and a bunch of players that should have been suspended for that game, but were not. And Arkansas found themselves down big early, like 28-3, 28-10, something like that. Battled all the way back. As an Arkansas guy, I was so pumped because we were down 31-26, and we blocked a punt with like a minute left. So we had the ball on Ohio State's 20 with like a minute left. And all we needed was a touchdown to win. And that was an Arkansas team with like Ryan Mallett and Niall Davis and that big crew of wide receivers. Ended up throwing an interception after that block punt. Lost the game 31-26. But technically that game never happened because that win, along with many others, was vacated when that big old Ohio State scandal went down. Jim Tressel was later fired. Urban Meyer came in, and the rest is history. But technically, there was no Sugar Bowl in 2011. Ohio State didn't win, so some people that are just ignorant and stupid, in my opinion, claim that Arkansas won that Sugar Bowl because Ohio State had to give it up. A win's a win regardless. So even though that game technically doesn't count in the record books, Ohio State won that game. And I would never, if one of my opponents had to give up a win, I would never claim that as my own victory. If I didn't win the game outright, then it doesn't count. I don't care if they have to give it up. You don't add that win to my total in the win column. That's not going to happen. So you need to win it outright, regardless of if the team's cheating or not. Otherwise, so be it. So be it. But that was probably the best game I've ever been to. I was at the year before. I was at the Arkansas Liberty Bowl when they beat East Carolina. It was such a cold game. I think it was like 8 degrees, but stuck through it. They won that game in overtime. Been to a handful of Arkansas State games. Those were a blast. Went to the Arkansas State-Missouri game a few years ago where Arkansas State nearly upset Missouri, and that was with Matty Mock. You guys remember that guy? Matty Mock, the quarterback for Missouri. He came into Jonesboro, and Arkansas State nearly took care of business there, ended up losing that game late as well. So I've been to a handful. I've been to a couple NFL games as well, a couple NBA games here and there, and I think I saw a question down there about that, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, the environment is what does it all for me. Being around, their shirts that people put out there. It's like you're surrounded by 70 or 80,000 of your closest friends. The environment of being at the game is so much different than just watching it in your living room or watching it at a bar or wherever. So everybody's got their own preferences, but being at the game is an experience like no other. Let's see. Ryan Mel, you were watching a live stream from the Late Kick, and he said that Auburn fans either want to go 11-1 or 5-7, so Gus Malzahn will get fired. And the last thing that they want is another 7-5 and 8-4 season. Well, I can tell you, Ryan, that what's going to happen there is if Auburn were to go 7-5 or 8-4 again, Gus Malzahn will get fired. There's no doubt in my mind. Auburn expects, like you said, they expect to go 10-2, 11-1, compete for an SEC title, beat Alabama, beat Georgia. But if they go mediocre again, 7-5, 8-4, Gus Malzahn is out of a job. And that is on the Auburn administration because a few years ago they gave him a big old contract extension for $50 million, I think over 7 years. That was a poor choice because even though Gus Malzahn a couple of years ago did beat Alabama, and I think Alabama and Georgia, and get to the SEC title game before losing to Georgia the second time in round 2, they finished the season 10-4. Had a mediocre season last year, and now this year, there's a lot of hype surrounding Auburn. I'm not really buying into it. I'm really, really not buying into this Auburn hype. Maybe it's real, but they have a quarterback question. Gus Malzahn's going back to calling the plays, which could be really good, or it could end up being really bad. We've seen how that's happened before. But, if they go anywhere less than 9 wins, I think Gus Malzahn is out. Anything greater than that, of course, he's going to stick around, and Auburn's going to be in contention for an SEC title. So there's really no in between. They're going to go bowling. They will go above 5 wins, but the question is, will they go, between 6 and 8 wins, or will it be between 8 and 10 wins? There's a big difference there, and his job could, be determined on a matter of whether they go 8-4 or 9-3. One game could easily determine Gus Malzahn's tenure at Auburn. And if they lose to Oregon in week 1, you can guarantee he will be on the hot seat for the remainder of the season. If they have another slow start, they're going to be in some big trouble. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But there's a lot of hype surrounding them. And usually when there's a lot of hype surrounding Auburn, usually when people are hyping them up like this, but then you've got some people out there saying, oh, no, we're not buying it. That's the year that Gus Malzahn comes out of nowhere and Auburn's in the running for a national title. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But it's going to be very, very interesting. Lane White, all right, I will certainly check my inbox here. I saw that, so I will definitely check that later on today, but I got it. Let's see what else. Walter, again, do I have any favorite teams in the NHL, NFL, MLB, and NBA? So, because of my where I am geographically, NHL, and how I've grown up personally, NHL is going to be the St. Louis Blues. So I was extremely happy when they won the Stanley Cup just a few weeks ago. I was thrilled when that happened. Their first one, I think it was. I was ecstatic for them. So that's my team. So along with that MLB, I'm a Cardinal fan, being also in St. Louis. That was my team. And the Rams were not my team when they were in St. Louis. I supported them, went to a handful of Rams games when they were in St. Louis, but that was not my team there. NBA, also geographically, I'm a fan of the Grizzlies, being in Memphis, but I'm also a fan of the Miami Heat. I've always liked them ever since I was very, very young. So the golden age when LeBron was there, that was great. Dwayne Wade won a title by himself though back in 2006, beating the Mavericks. Him and Shaq were together, but then LeBron came in. They got Chris Bosh. They won a couple of titles. So it was bad when he left. But I also have a lot of respect for Eric Spoelstra. I love him as a coach. People give him a lot of hate, but he's a guy, and I know he's struggled since LeBron has left. I don't think has made it past the second round of the NBA playoffs. But he's a great man, a great coach. And so I have a lot of respect for him, and that's why I enjoy watching the Heat so much. So let's see what else we got here. Mike Myrick, you like that. That's your squad. I mean, you being a Florida State fan, I figure you being a Florida guy, so, hey, we can agree on that. Go Heat, baby. Tyler Hero, the guy out of Kentucky, I thought that was a very solid draft pick the other night. Heck of a three-point shooter and heck of a free throw shooter. So that's going to be good. It kind of bolster up our offense a little bit, especially with, he reminds me a little bit, not fully, of Goran Dragic. So maybe we can get some production out of him pretty quick. So, but yeah, I was happy about that. Let's see what else here. Trey Drew, speaking of Dana Holgorsen, how do I think Houston will be? Trey, we've talked about this and kind of not fully on Houston, like dedicated to Houston, but I've brought them up a lot because someone has asked, is a group of 5 team ever going to get into the college football playoff? And I mentioned Houston a couple of years ago with that win over Oklahoma, still with Tom Herman. Had they gone undefeated, they would have gone to the college football playoff, no doubt in my mind. They could do that this year. If they beat Oklahoma in week 1, and I think they have a game against Washington State as well, so Mike Leach and another potent offense there, and then run the table in the American Athletic, you could be talking about a spot in the group of 5. And some people will say, well, why can Houston go undefeated and maybe be considered for a spot in the playoff, but not UCF? It's because, once again, it comes down to strength of schedule. Did UCF beat Oklahoma and Washington State in the regular season the past 2 years? They didn't. And Houston would have to beat a UCF team as well to get into that contention for the college football playoff. So I would assume they'd have to beat that UCF team. So this is a team this year with Holgorsen that the high point could be a potential spot in the college football playoff, or at least a New Year's Six bowl. And that's what Houston fans expect. They got used to that with their offense. Over the past couple of years. I mean, we'll go way back when Kevin Sumlin was there and like Case Keenum and guys like that. They thrived. And then they get Tom Herman, and they won a New Year's Six bowl game over Florida State. Were in contention for one until they slipped up against Navy and SMU that year. So they want to be in contention for, I guess you could say, playoff if they can go undefeated, but a New Year's Six bowl game. But this year, I expect them to win 8, maybe 9 games. what I can say is Holgerson, well, it was an interesting move to have him come from West Virginia, a Power 5 head coaching gig, back down to a group of 5. But they say the AAC is like the Power 6. It's like an extra Power 5 conference, an extra power conference. And if that's the case, and I do believe that because we've seen the success that the AAC has had against these Power 5 schools, Holgerson is going to build something there and certainly challenge the teams like UCF and Memphis who have thrived for so long in the American Athletic. I run for their money. So Holgerson, right man for the job. And I think the fact that he went, the fact that he went from a Power 5 job at West Virginia back down to a group of 5, he could have propelled himself from West Virginia to a higher Power 5 job, a better place, another big-time school. But he chose to go back down. I think he's going to be at Houston for a little while. I don't think it's going to be a short-term deal. I think he's there for a while. And I know he had ties to Houston beforehand, but Trey, Houston's going to be dangerous. If they're not going to be dangerous this year, I take that back. They will be dangerous this year. That wide receiver core and De'Aaron King at Houston, they're going to be tough to stop. This is Dana Holgorsen, offensive-minded coach, and he has inherited a team that is extremely dangerous offensively. I know last year that bowl loss to Army, 70-14, extremely embarrassing. That's going to be on their mind a little bit, and that could actually even benefit them. A new head coach, a fresh start, and a chance at redemption. Houston's going to be dangerous in 2019. Andrew Vogel, could Michigan State win the Big Ten East? Absolutely they could, because you never doubt Mark D'Antonio. I stress that all the time. I never want to doubt one of his teams. But this year, yes, they can win the Big Ten East, no doubt. But the teams they have ahead of them, Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State. And Michigan State, despite how much hype Michigan has got, Michigan State has done extremely well against the Wolverines, especially since Jim Harbaugh has arrived in Ann Arbor. So, yes, they can win the East, but with those 3 teams in that division with them, I don't think this is going to be the year for that. Everybody's super high on Michigan. Even like some of the big-time analysts, Phil Steele even being one of them, has them in the college football playoff, falling to Alabama, but still making the top 4. This is the year that Michigan could beat Ohio State, and if they want to get to the Big Ten championship, this is the year they have to do it. Ohio State, even with a new head coach, even with a new quarterback, it's still going to be tough to beat. So Michigan State has the work cut out for them, but I'm not going to say they can't win it because Mark D'Antonio has proved me wrong time and time again and tends to surprise a lot of people constantly. So, yes, they certainly can, but it's going to be a very, very tough road to do so. But make sure you check out our predictions, man. Check out the Gridiron Expert official predictions for the Big Ten, and you'll know about that. You'll know what we officially think about Mark D'Antonio and the Spartans. All right, so there's your trivia fact, guys. I don't know if anybody's seen it. Emperor of Rome, speaking of Penn State, their original colors were not navy and white, but pink and black. So there's some quick trivia for you, he says. So odd, actually, to think of a Penn State squad wearing pink and black as their original colors. So actually, I take that back. Any college football school having one of their primary colors being pink. So very interesting there. Very, very interesting there. Comic dude, pink and black is ugly. Don't at me. Will Burrow, who do I think is going to be the quarterback at Arkansas State? So, okay, so we're switching. Will being an Arkansas guy, good friend of mine. Will, I can tell you that I believe the quarterback for the Red Wolves is going to be Lane Hatcher, as it should be. Lane transferring from Alabama, a place he never should have gone in the first place. He was never going to play for the Crimson Tide. It was not going to happen. Lane being a product of the Pulaski Academy system in Little Rock, one of the top high schools in the state, and at one point was one of the top high school football programs in the nation. Product of that, won some titles there. He will thrive at Arkansas State. He didn't stand a chance at Alabama. And not just because they have a guy named Tua Tagovailoa there, simply because he's not that good. He's good enough to play at a team like Arkansas State, or maybe a team in the Conference USA. He was not good enough to compete in the SEC, and regardless the SEC West. So it should be Lane Hatcher at quarterback for the Red Wolves. I would be shocked if Blake Anderson, the head coach there, chooses somebody else. And he very well could choose somebody else early on in the season, like week 1, when they open up against SMU. No slouch there. But I would not be surprised if that you see multiple quarterbacks, but I think in the end, Hatcher is going to be the man for the job. But if I were Blake Anderson, that's who I would pick. I think that's the one that's going to give them the most success, and a guy that I think could very well take over from one of the best quarterbacks in recent memory for Arkansas State, and Justice Hansen. Lamar, I like this question a lot, and I think we're almost getting caught up here. I'm going to try to get there pretty quickly, but I like this question, so I'm going to stop. Is Georgia more vulnerable this season than last season? I think some people addressed that already in the comments, but I'm going to take some time to address it as well. Lamar, that loss of Holloman at wide receiver hurts them, as we mentioned, but it's nothing drastic. This is a team that is going to rely on the run game and a defense that year in and year out has lost plenty of talent, but Kirby Smart continues to just kind of restock. He just one leads and he replaces somebody else. I mean, Kirby Smart, being the defensive-minded coach he is, the job he did at Alabama, the job he's done at Georgia so far, the defense should remain fine. The offense is the only question that I have for Georgia, but they still have a veteran quarterback in Jake Fromm. They still have one of probably the best running back core, I think, in the SEC. The wide receivers, who Jake Fromm's going to throw to, is the only question. Now, when you talk about vulnerable, talent-wise, probably not. Competition-wise, yes. Florida, last year it would have been a little wrong to say Florida could beat Georgia. That was pretty bold for anybody to say. This year, it is extremely possible that Florida could do just that. So the East is much more competitive in the sense that, as we've said earlier on this live stream, Florida is going to be competitive and can really challenge Georgia. So could Missouri with a potent offense and Kelly Bryant, a team that could very well win, anywhere between 8 to 10 games. So you have to look out for that. Tennessee, a trap team and a trap game for anybody in the SEC, a team that's certainly up and coming, and I know Jeremy Pruitt would be thrilled to pull off an upset over a Georgia team. And in recent years, Tennessee has given Georgia some trouble. So you look at those teams that I just listed: Florida, Tennessee, and I'm going to mention South Carolina as well. But Florida, Tennessee, and Missouri could very well give Georgia a fight. And then you've got South Carolina, a team that's filled with veterans and a veteran quarterback, one of the best in the SEC, top half of the SEC quarterbacks. Just a tough schedule might not show that. It's extremely possible. And of course, Georgia having to face Texas A&M from the West, and I can't remember who their other crossover game is. But vulnerable talent-wise, no. Vulnerable schedule-wise, absolutely. And vulnerable in terms of the way other teams have built themselves up. I still think Georgia is the favorite in the SEC East. I still think they're going to be the kings of the SEC East and have a very solid shot at making the college football playoff after just narrowly missing out last year. But this is a year that if anybody else is going to win the East, they have to take advantage of that, and I think that other team would be Florida. And I think Dan Mullen knows that. Florida knows that if they want to win the East, this could be the year to do it. Because Georgia, the way they've been recruiting, my God, they're going to be tough for a very, very long time. Of course, you could have people, as people have been mentioning, as Ryan mentioned earlier, it's like clockwork. People are going to get suspended. People are going to get kicked off the team. People are going to get arrested. That's been happening a lot lately for Georgia. Hopefully they can get that under control. But the way they've been recruiting has been unbelievable. I think they said there are 24 5-stars in the SEC East right now, if I'm not mistaken, and Georgia has 22 of them. Or something like that. I mean, it's unbelievable how well Kirby Smart has recruited since he arrived in Athens. So this is certainly the year that another team could take advantage of Georgia's not lack of talent, because there's plenty there, but vulnerability, if you will, to win the SEC East. Trey Drew, PJ Fleck, or Jerry Kill at Minnesota? Isn't it crazy that they coached together previously? Well, absolutely. And right now, in terms of success wise, I'm gonna go. I love Jerry Kill, I really did, but PJ Fleck. I love PJ Fleck's intensity. I love his mindset, and I love what he's doing with Minnesota. They're a team, guys, that could very well surprise some people in the Big Ten this season, in that Big Ten West division that's really up for grabs, in my opinion. You've got teams like Iowa, Nebraska, and Wisconsin, and guys like that. But what PJ Fleck did at Western Michigan is what got him the job at Minnesota. And I've seen constant progress since PJ Fleck arrived at Minnesota. They didn't have a great year one, took major strides in year two, winning their bowl game in dominant fashion. This year, plenty of returning talent, a lot of hype surrounding this team, and a passionate coach. I take PJ Fleck. Emperor of Rome. So back to your earlier comment about how you kind of support Colorado State on top of Alabama and Michigan and Penn State, and I wondered why. So Alabama played them in 2017, and I remember I'm not going to lie, I remember watching that game. The Rams did put up 23 points, and that earns you their respect for them, and you followed them ever since. And that is a good reason, Emperor, for liking a team. Guys, a team where you learn to respect them, and I'm not saying anybody here is that, but you hear about bandwagoners all the time. You like a team because they're good. You like a team because they just won a championship. Well, maybe it's cool to like a team because they gave your main team a pretty darn good fight. They kind of threatened you a little bit, or really put up, kind of showed some toughness and showed maybe they beat your team, and maybe they weren't supposed to. Okay, I respect that team. I respect that coach, and that's why you like them. So I think that's interesting. But I remember watching that. That was when who did they have? They had Nick Stevens, I think, at quarterback for the Rams. And then one of their big-time wide receivers, Michael Gallup, I think, if I'm not mistaken. He used to play for the Rams, has now become a key piece of the Dallas Cowboys wide receiver core alongside Amari Cooper. So they did have a pretty good offense there. And what Mike Bobo has done during his time with the Rams has been pretty impressive. He took over a team that struggled for so long, got them to a couple bowl games last year, went 3-9, but did beat an SEC team in Arkansas. So that's kind of the highlight of their season. But he's doing a great job there, and another product of the Georgia system and that Georgia coaching staff. MCD Sports Forward, do I like games when it's snowing? Oh, absolutely. Those are a blast to watch. I love watching weather games. I think we've talked about that at times about, do we like games that are where it's pouring down rain or maybe it's really cold or a lot of snow? It's a lot of fun to watch. I don't know if I like being there. I don't know if I'd like to be down on the field playing or maybe be in the stands. I think it'd be pretty tough. But if I'm in the comfort of my own home or a living room or a bar or something like that, it's a blast to watch. It really is. And I think maybe if you were there, it could be different. Everybody's in the same environment, so it's just something. It's a memory. It's something that you're not going to forget. But no, if I'm just watching it, yeah, snow games are a blast. As long as I can still see what's going on, that's my key. As long as sometimes it's snowing so hard or raining so hard that you can't even tell, and it's not fun for anybody. Comic Dude, that is a great question. That's a tough one. If Chris Ash were to get fired from Rutgers next year, who would y'all want to take? Or who should you take, rather? Man, that's a tough call because, you know this, I know this. Rutgers is not necessarily a hot spot for college football, relatively speaking, in terms of like a USC or a big-time SEC school or something like that. So I wouldn't expect you to get a major coach. Now, I will say this. You could potentially land, if Chris Ash were to get fired, you could land a coach. The best place to look is, sure, promote from a group of 5 school. You could certainly do that. You can promote assistants. Maybe you got someone from within the Rutgers system that could do that. But the odds of that, no. One guy I would like to see get back into the coaching game, though, and I don't know how you would feel about this, Comic Dude, is how about Bobby Petrino? And Prince 6'1", I see you there. What's going on, man? It's been a while. So I'm glad to have you back. Glad to have you on the stream. But how about Bobby Petrino, Comic Dude? He just got fired from Louisville, as we know, and Lord knows he's been all over the place. He's coach for the Falcons. Absolutely not, he says. Absolutely not. I love it. Yeah, we know the history of Bobby Petrino, and I will say this. He succeeded at Arkansas. He succeeded at Louisville in his first stint, and he succeeded at Louisville briefly in his second stint. Of course, he was coaching a guy named Lamar Jackson, and then when Lamar Jackson left, he failed. But okay, all right, he shut that down quickly. He shut that down very quickly. Moral-wise, certainly not the guy you would want either. And I can say this as well, alongside the moral standpoint, and if we're talking about poor morals, a guy that I have repeatedly said I think is using his current school as a stepping stone to get back into a major coaching gig, Hugh Freeze. Now, I don't know if Rutgers would be the place to go for that, and I don't know if Rutgers would even look at Petrino or Hugh Freeze if they fire Chris Ash, but I don't think Hugh Freeze is going to stick around at Liberty. I think he's using Liberty much like other coaches have used tinier schools. Stay there for a year, maybe two, and then they jump ship and go to a big-time school, back to where they want to be. Maybe Rutgers is that place for Hugh Freeze. Geographically, Liberty, Rutgers, not a horrible distance there, but that could be a place, a stop for Hugh Freeze. I don't think he's going to stay at Liberty that long. You mentioned Greg Schiano. That's a possibility as well. I saw what you said at the end of that. How likely is that? Probably not. But, a lot of people don't like him either. He almost landed the Tennessee job a couple years ago, and people shut that down quickly. And that's unfortunate. But right now we're talking future. Assuming Chris Ash is going to get fired, let's hope maybe he doesn't. Let's hope maybe Chris Ash somehow turns the ship around and gets Rutgers to a bowl game or wins 5 games and can keep his job there. That would be the best case scenario, right? Maybe keep him, and then if he the year after that failed to get to a bowl game, yeah, you could fire him. But I would be intrigued to see who Rutgers could land there as well. Once again, Prince, like you said, good to see you, man. I'm glad to have you back. I know it's been a little while since we were able to get you on the stream, so it's always good to have you when you're here. Make sure I'm not skipping over anybody that has a big-time question here. Jamie Chisholm, if I'm pronouncing that right, with Graham Harrell at USC, do I think they could have the best offense in the Pac-12? And could they win the Pac-12? Jamie, I'm going to tell you no. I'm going to say no. And here's why. Yes, Graham Harrell is going to be the coordinator for USC. Yes, they have a prominent young quarterback in JT Daniels. But the Pac-12 is just too talented this year across the board. Oregon is the team that is attracting so much attention because of the offense that they're bringing back, especially led by Justin Herbert, probably the best quarterback in that conference. Washington, not going to have a lot of returning starters on the defensive side of the ball, and that has been one of their strengths the past couple of years. And they did lose Myles Gaskin. They did lose Jake Browning, but they do bring in Jacob Eason at quarterback, and that's huge for them and Chris Peterson. So you got Washington. Utah is a team that is getting a lot of hype as well. They returned Zach Moss at running back and Tyler Huntley, both of who got hurt last year, but now they're going to be back from their injury. And this is a team that some people could have winning the Pac-12, that people have being really dangerous. So I don't think they can win the Pac-12 this year, Jamie. I do not see USC even coming close to winning the Pac-12 this season. Maybe they surprise us, but I do not see that being a possibility. Best offense, I don't think so either. I think with the teams that I just mentioned, and that was just 3. That was just Oregon, Washington, and Utah. The amount of veterans and the amount of quarterback talent that they have there, I think it's going to be too much for USC to even compete in that category of being the best offense in the Pac-12. I think Graham Harrell obviously was a great player back during his time at Texas Tech. He's going to try to implement a sort of air raid, more passing style offense at USC, and that can certainly boost up their numbers in the categories, in the stats. But when they're going up against these schools that I've mentioned, alongside plenty of others, I don't see that happening. Like we mentioned, Helton's on the hot seat, guys. Helton's on the hot seat, Jamie, and he's got to win at least 6 games to even try to save his job, and that's going to be very tough to do in and of itself. OC 5412, good to have you. I'm getting down. I know you probably put that comment out there a while back. Do I think Northwestern is a contender in the Big Ten West? Oh, absolutely. Look, they won it last year. So I can't sit here and tell you that the guys that won it last year aren't going to be a contender this year. And now with the addition of Hunter Johnson at quarterback, Clayton Thorson, they lose him, but they bring in Hunter Johnson from Clemson. He's getting a lot of hype. So absolutely, Pat Fitzgerald doing a great job with his Wildcats team, and they are absolutely a contender in what I truly believe to be a wide open Big Ten West. And I've actually said it on previous live streams. I don't think the West is just wide open. I think the entire conference is wide open because I know Michigan is like the favorite. I know they are the favorite to win it all right now. It's Michigan or Ohio State, as it has been for a while now. I know Penn State won a few years ago. I know Wisconsin has been up there. They've gotten there but haven't won it. But this is a wide open conference because Michigan tends to fail under Jim Harbaugh in the big-time games. So maybe Michigan slips up. I know Notre Dame's not a Big Ten game. I'm aware of that. But, if you're talking about playoff contention, that could hurt them. So maybe they slip up against Notre Dame. Maybe they still can't beat Ohio State. So maybe Ohio State slips in there. Maybe Penn State pulls off some upsets. We mentioned Mark D'Antonio, Michigan State. It's unpredictable. We mentioned Maryland, and Maryland's up there with some teams like y'all said with maybe Michigan State that can pull off a couple upsets. There's a lot of teams that can play them that might not be in the Big Ten title hunt themselves, but can play a factor in a role on who ends up being there. On the West side, Iowa, Northwestern, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska. I mean, that's 5 teams right there that any single one of them could win that division. So absolutely Northwestern's a contender. That is going to be a very, very tough conference in and of itself. I'm excited to see how it all plays out. I really am because it's so unpredictable. And I'm sure my Big Ten predictions, when we release those, are going to spark plenty of discussion and plenty of disagreement. But so be it. That's the fun of predictions. But that's going to be a very, very, very fun conference to watch in 2019, just because of how wide open it is. Other conferences, you can look at it. It's not a guarantee, but you can look at it and say, yeah, I'm like 95% sure that team is going to win that conference or that team is going to win that division. But the Big Ten, you can't say that. You can predict Michigan that's going to win the East, and you can predict, say, Nebraska, a team that's getting a lot of hype, is going to win the West, but it's not a guarantee. Or I'm sorry, Nebraska's not in that division. Pardon me. But still, regardless. Let's see who else we got here. Street Fair. Good to have you, Matt. Another good question. I love these questions. Who do I think will have the best defense in the SEC East this year? So not just the SEC, but the East specifically. And we're finally getting caught up. Thank God. I've been trying to catch up on these comments here. But right now, man, I would say it is going to be a tough call for me between Georgia and Florida. And are you surprised? Those are arguably the top 2 teams in the SEC East. And we mentioned earlier the talent that Kirby Smart has continued to bring in and develop at Georgia on the defensive side of the ball, because that is his side of the ball. He was defensive coordinator at Alabama, and his defenses at Alabama were so tough and so hard. And so now he's doing the same thing at Georgia. And MCD, I see your comment there. Don't rule out South Carolina and Kentucky. I will rule out Kentucky a little bit. Now, not fully, but a little bit. And I know one player doesn't make up a defense, but they do lose Josh Allen, their first-round NFL draft pick, and a handful of other players on the defensive side of the ball. Now, Mark Stoops, also a defensive-minded coach, sure can do that, can bring in some talent and maybe rejuvenate a defense. But I think I can rule out Kentucky a little bit. Florida is a team that I really think might own the best defense in the SEC East right now. Like I said, it's tough between them. You can maybe include South Carolina, who I mentioned is a veteran team. Whether or not that veteran team can compete against their such tough of a schedule. Alabama and Clemson and A&M also from the West, and on top of Florida and Georgia and the rest of the SEC East. But I will say that I think Florida probably has the best defense in the SEC East right now. So, Prince, you, being a Clemson guy, know a little bit about Hunter Johnson, and we were talking about Northwestern here. Hunter Johnson is a stud. You actually think he should have started over Kelly Bryant in 2017. That's pretty bold. And you said you've seen him live in games and in practice. Of course, like I said, being a Michigan guy, or a Clemson guy, you would know that. Bold statement, though, to say you think he should have been over Kelly Bryant in 2017, considering that Kelly Bryant did get you to the playoff that season. I know you lost to Alabama, I think it was 24-6, and everybody criticized and probably still do a little bit. Kelly Bryant was phenomenal as a dual threat quarterback. He could make the plays on the ground, but he really couldn't spread the field through the air, and that's something that he needed to work on. And Trevor Lawrence is providing that for Clemson. He's not necessarily dual threat like Kelly Bryant was, but you don't need that when you've got such a great arm and accuracy and precision that Trevor Lawrence has. If Kelly Bryant improves on his passing, his actual passing, he will play a major role at Missouri. Because I think he's going to be dangerous with his feet. But bold to say that when you're talking about a quarterback that did get you to the college football playoff. But he is a stud from what I've heard and from what I have personally seen. I haven't seen him in person by any means, but he's certainly going to be the quarterback at Northwestern. There's almost no doubt about that. And he's going to be one of the biggest keys to whether or not Northwestern repeats as champions of the West, or maybe they just go to another bowl game. So it's going to be interesting. And keep in mind, Northwestern, past couple of years, they won, I think, 9 or 10 games last year. They won 10 games the past couple, like 2 of the past 3 years, and never won the Big Ten, won the Big Ten West. Of course, that was when Wisconsin was still so dominant. They went undefeated 2 years ago before falling to Ohio State in the championship game. But still, Pat Fitzgerald's done a phenomenal job at Northwestern. It's gotten overshadowed by other teams in the Big Ten. So Northwestern can still have a very solid year and not even win that division. Now, I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think if they were to win 10 games or 9 games, they could very well win the West. I think the West, as wide open as it is, you don't have that one dominant team that's going to overshadow another. I think they're all fairly equal. So we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. But Hunter Johnson absolutely going to be huge for this Northwestern program. And Rome, some more trivia here, and I'm loving it. Never forget that Princeton and Yale have the most national championships ever, official national championships. Let's add that in there as well. Not claimed national titles, but official. Princeton has 28, Yale has 27. So those Ivy League teams, I think I saw a comment earlier talking about those Ivy League teams are the real deal, are the absolute real deal. And I love watching some Ivy League football every now and then. It's just obviously the biggest one, Harvard and Yale, just because of that rivalry there. But yeah, man, Harvard, Princeton, and Yale, some of the big dogs in the Ivy League. Ryan Mell mentioning Kentucky has major holes in the secondary, and that's why I kind of quickly ruled them out. I mean, you got to have a complete defense. Your defensive line can be great, but you got to make sure you have a complete defense all the way around, especially when you're going up against an SEC East, just that division that has plenty of solid quarterbacks. You got Jake Fromm, you got Kelly Bryant, you got Jake Bentley. I mentioned Riley Neal coming over, playing at Vanderbilt now. People might not like to hear it, but I think Felipe Franks is a very solid quarterback for Florida. So you need to have a decent secondary, without a doubt. Munchie, I saw you popping into the chat. Good to have you, man. Always a blast when you're around. So I'm glad you're able to make it tonight. Unfortunately, we're slowly about to wrap things up, but hey, better late than never. Always glad to have you. So Street Fair, we talked about the best SEC East. I see. Okay, so you addressed that there. But best SEC East defense. How about the best SEC East offense? And yes, if you had just said the entire SEC, I would have, yes, of course, gone Alabama. So way to clarify there and make it a little harder on me. Best SEC East offense. That's a tough call. I can tell you what. I will rule out the Vanderbilt. I will rule out Kentucky. So there's 2. So now we're down to 5. I will go ahead and while I'm at it, I will rule out Tennessee. I know they've got Jarrett Garantano at quarterback, and they're building something there, but I'm going to take them out of the question. So now we're down to 4, and I will once again take another team out, and we're slowly narrowing it down for you. And I'm sure you're going to be very surprised who my top 2 are. I will take out Missouri, and I know they have Kelly Bryant, and I know that they have had potent offenses in the past, especially with Drew Lock and some of those big-time wide receivers that they've had under Barry Odom. But I will take them out of the equation because even though they do bring in Kelly Bryant, I'm curious to see how he fares against SEC opponents, period. Last time he went up against a big dog in the SEC, he did not fare well at all. And I know that was Alabama, but still. So now we're down to 3. That is Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina. And I will shockingly rule out Carolina because even though I have praise their offense and their veterans, especially Jake Bentley at quarterback. That schedule is just so tough. And I know the schedule doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the talent that they have. You can have a great offense and, oh, well, you have a tough schedule. Maybe you can win those games, maybe you can't. But that leaves you with the top two, Florida and Georgia. And if you wrote it down on paper, if I could break it down to you, I think that you're looking at it, and I'm going to say that Georgia owns the advantage at quarterback. Because you have Jake Fromm versus Felipe Franks. Well, which one's more proven? Well, it's Jake Fromm, without a doubt. The guy's gotten the Bulldogs to a national championship, nearly got him back to the college football playoff last year. He's very, very accurate. A lot of people, Jake Fromm's not that good. They rely so much on their running game, but he's an extremely accurate passer. So there's that. And then when you look at their running back situation, no doubt the odds go to Georgia. It goes to Georgia. I mentioned it earlier that I think they have the best running back core in the entire SEC. I don't know how people like to hear that, but I believe that. So they have that the entire the best running back core in the entire SEC over Florida, and right there you go. And Ryan, you mentioned it there. They've got the best offensive line, a very experienced offensive line. So you have the best running backs running behind the best offensive line. You have the best quarterback being protected by the best offensive line. Even though Georgia has to scrap pretty much all their wide receivers, they just lost Holloman. They're going to have to replace a lot of big time wide receivers. Georgia has the best offense in the SEC East, and that is why they are the kings of the SEC East, and will be until someone can dethrone them. And that team will most likely be the guy that's been number 2 as I've been breaking down the East, Florida. But whether that's going to be this year or next year or 5 years from now, that remains to be seen. And if Georgia continues to recruit the way they've been recruiting, it very well could be 5 years from now unless Dan Mullen steps up his game, because Georgia and Kirby Smart are doing a phenomenal job on the recruiting trail. Now they just have to keep the players on the team and keep them out of some legal trouble, which sounds and should be easier than apparently it is. But no, that was a very good question, Street Fair. I really do. Those were some great answers. All right, great questions. Didn't mean to pride on myself a little bit there. Munchie, who's going to win the Big Ten? So you just missed it, man. You joined the stream right before or right after we finished talking about the Big Ten, and we were talking about how wide open it is. The favorite right now, Munchie, it is Michigan. I think a lot of people have them there, and I know people are going to criticize that. But why is it Michigan? They can hardly beat Michigan State. They can hardly beat Ohio State. So why are they the favorite? A lot of the analysts out there have them making the college football playoff. Right now, I'm not one of them. Wait till our predictions, of course. I'm not saying Michigan's going to win 8 games, which would be a major disappointment. But the Big Ten's wide open, Munchie. That's the problem. I think the champion will come out of the East, and I think the champion will be Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, or Michigan State. I think those 4. Those are your top 4 contenders in the Eastern Division. And I know we got NCD Sports 4 and a couple other guys on here that will say it's Maryland. That Maryland could be up there with like Michigan State. So if I mention Michigan State, you might as well mention Maryland. But with a new head coach, I know you got Josh Jackson, but still, I'm going to keep those 4 in there. The champion's going to come out of those 4. I don't think the champion will come out of the West. But it's so up for grabs right now. If I had to pick now, I would be like the others, maybe say Michigan, but that's not even official. Wait till our predictions come out for that, and you'll know for sure. But, yeah. Jim Harbaugh really needs to take some major steps forward. Get the monkey off his back. Everybody gets on to him. He can't win the big games. He can't beat Ohio State. He can't beat Michigan State. He can't win big and bowl games. They lost to South Carolina a few years ago after blowing a huge lead. They got killed by Florida last year in the Peach Bowl. They lost to Florida State a couple years ago in the Orange Bowl. When will Jim Harbaugh finally break through and do what we expected him to do when we brought him here to Ann Arbor? Congratulations, you won 9 or 10 games. You still haven't won a Big Ten title. Congratulations, you won 9 or 10 games. You still can't beat our biggest rival in Ohio State. He's on the hot seat, and he's doing better than a lot of these Power 5 coaches are doing at their respective schools. And that's sad, because I think a lot of teams would be thrilled to be consistently winning 9 or 10 games and be in the hunt in late November for a spot in the college football playoff. But they're just unable to do that. And Comic Dude, he's saying in defense of Michigan, they clearly did not want to be there in the Peach Bowl. Maybe not. I understand when you are on the verge of breaking through to the Big Ten championship game, on the verge of getting to the college football playoff, and you just get hammered by Ohio State, that's tough. That is tough. And that carries over into your next game. But I've never been a huge fan of the phrases people use, oh, they just weren't motivated, or they just didn't want to be there. You know, if you don't want to be there, then forfeit. That's my opinion. Then don't even show up. Because, I mean, what are you doing there? You're wasting everybody's time. And now, congratulations to Florida. They got a big-time win. It's happy for them and their fans. But you're wasting the coaches' time. It is bad. Forfeiting is bad. And it would look horrible. But, you know, if your mindset is, I don't want to be here, we should be in the national championship game, we should be in the playoff, we should have won the Big Ten. Well, guess what? You didn't. So, right, you should show up like a man. And when you say that comment, dude, you show up like a man and you play like a man and you fight like a man and you fight like a team that's hungry. You know, the best thing I can say for that, the best comparison I can have for that is TCU back in 2014. TCU was a dominant team and they got left out of the college football playoff. What did they do? They came to the exact same bowl game, the Peach Bowl, and annihilated Ole Miss in that game. Because they showed up like a man. They could have sat there and cried about it and said, we should have been in. We don't want to be here. But they pretty much used that as a stepping stone and said, we should have been in. We should have been in. We just annihilated Ole Miss. I think in that year, that was the year Ole Miss beat Alabama. And it wasn't even close. You made a mistake not putting us in the college football playoff. So that's what people need to do. When people say, oh, they weren't motivated or they didn't want to be there, that's what they need to do. And it makes me angry. I see that Emperor of Rome. He's getting fired up. I am fired up. And I also appreciate your comment. Thank you for the comment about the tie. I got a closet full of these things, but this is one of my favorites. But I am fired up about this stuff. It pisses me off because you hear coaches all the time and people all the time, they're not motivated to be in this game. They didn't want to be there. Well, then what job are the coaches doing? What job are these players doing when you're representing a school and a university and a program and you've got fans watching you and traveling you for these bowl games and you just don't want to show up and play? And that's why I said forfeit. Save everybody the time. The other team's going to have a field day out there on the field, but what are you doing? What are you doing? And then you just sound like an idiot when you sit there and you tell people, oh, we just weren't motivated to be there. Or we didn't want to be there, or we were upset. You sound like a big old wuss when you say, we were upset because we got our ass kicked by our rival, or we were upset because we got left out of the playoff or whatever. Show up, play like a man, do it right. TCU in 2014 was the best example of that and will forever be until someone else can show me that they can play like they did after that game, after getting left out of the playoff. I see that don't turn green. I know. I get a little angry. Had a little rant there. I know. I'm sorry. You get the best of me. But it's how I truly feel about that. It's ridiculous. But, maybe Michigan didn't want to be there last year in the Peach Bowl. But you still need to. And I know they lost players because they stepped out because of the NFL draft and stuff like that. But still, you got to keep that in mind. Emperor of Rome summed it up perfectly. If you can't show up and give it your all, then don't show up at all. It's very true. It's absolutely true. Don't show up at all if you're not going to show up and give it your all. Absolutely. So there is your rant for the night. There is your got pretty fired up there, but it's something that I do take very seriously. Something I take seriously about players sitting out for the NFL draft and stuff like that. Those are some things that are really big topics and things that are important that sometimes people that they just don't understand. That players and coaches don't understand, and it's something that always needs to be addressed. Whether it makes a difference or not, it's up to the people that are talking to him. And Prince is making a great point there, whether it makes a difference, you're talking about motivation. It's what separates great players, and being motivated is a skill in and of itself. Not everybody can motivate. It takes a special person, it takes a special coach, it's not easy. It's easier said than done, but there's a special way to motivate, and Prince is making a solid point there. It's a skill. It's not something that everybody has. Not everybody can be a solid motivator, and that's why that can sometimes separate. You said great players can also separate great coaches. Can you have a solid coach that knows how to motivate a player, that knows how to motivate a team? If you don't have a great motivator as a coach, you might not have a great performance out of your teams. So that's something to something to consider, without a doubt. Eli making a good point there as well. Players should have pride because you think teams like maybe Rutgers or Kansas would give anything to just make a bowl game. And absolutely those teams, but those fan bases too. I mean, I know those players out there for those schools are much more talented, much more skilled, and much more in shape than the fan base. And I think they take it maybe harder than the fan base does, because those are the guys that are putting in the blood and the sweat and the tears out there on the field and the weight room all year long. And we as fans and analysts kind of look there and sit on it and criticize them. So I know it's tough, and you got to look at it from both sides. But you're right. I think some fan bases and some teams would give anything just to be in a low-level bowl game when you've got some teams that are playing in big-time New Year's Six games, and they don't act like they care. Emperor of Rome, once again, making a very good point. If you don't care enough to play as hard as you can, then don't put your players in harm's way by sending them out there to play anyways. Because maybe it's not just a player thing. Maybe it's not just the players that aren't motivated. Maybe it's a coach's thing that's not motivated. If they aren't motivated to be there, if they don't want to be there, then you're right. Why stick your players out there and make them play? Maybe it's important to them, but like we've talked before, talent and skill, you got to be coached up. If these guys don't coach, if these guys don't motivate, if these guys don't get these players ready for games like that, then the players are probably not going to play as well either. So it's definitely something to consider and definitely something to think about. So there was that big-time topic for the night. Always love talking about that. I'm going to hit a couple of questions, last questions before we wrap things up. Once again, running at about another hour and a half, and I certainly did not have that intention for the night, but as I was going, I realized we were about almost an hour in, and time just flew by like that. So, they say time flies when you're having fun, and so apparently the past 2 live streams have been an absolute blast because it really has turned by pretty quick. Eli making a good point. We were talking about TCU back in 2014. Baylor should have made the playoff that year. They beat TCU head-to-head. An absolute thriller. I wish I had been at that game. And should have been the sole champs on the tiebreaker. And I think Baylor finished the year, I think TCU was 6th, so Baylor was 5th. And that was the year that Baylor went to the Cotton Bowl, I think, and lost to Michigan State. Blew a huge lead to Mark D'Antonio and ended up falling after blowing that huge lead there. So, and I can see the comments there, so maybe we will keep these up. Everybody's a huge fan of the of the longer live streams, so maybe we'll have to keep this going. I'm having a blast with them, and if you guys are, then we'll certainly try to keep it up as much as possible. But no, we appreciate that. We appreciate that support. Let's see if make sure I didn't miss any other questions during that rant here. Eli, do I approve or disapprove of Chad Morris at Arkansas? Right now, I approve. And I know if there were any other Arkansas fans on the line, they would say, well, why do you approve? We just went 2-10. It's because this guy, we talked about motivator, I think he is a solid motivator. I also think he's a solid recruiter. I've never seen a school go 2-10 and then recruit a top 20 recruiting class. That's extremely difficult to do. So I think Chad Morris is building something. And when I look at a coach, I look at a bunch of other aspects, but I also look at how that person is morally. I look at how he is as a man, and I think Chad Morris is certainly that guy as well. Now, someone could have said the same thing about Bobby Petrino and Hugh Freeze when they first got hired at their respective schools. Anything can happen. I would hope nothing like that would happen to Chad Morris, but he is a guy that I think can slowly build something at Arkansas and get Arkansas back to where they were back in 2010, 2011, before everything fell apart in 2012. So right now, I do approve of him. If they have another year like they did last year, if the 2019 is another failure, anywhere between 2 to 4 wins, then everything will begin to change on Chad Morris. Everybody will begin to turn on Chad Morris. But right now, I do respect him. I do approve of him, and I think he's the right man for the job at Arkansas. They just got to give him time. Let's see what else we have here. So we have a lot of comments about talking about about the motivation issue. Munchie. Now that is a name I haven't heard in a long time. It's a little Star Wars reference there. Do I remember Chucky Keaton from Utah State? He was underrated. I absolutely do remember that. Yes, Prince. I thought you knew that, man. Yes, sir. Yes, Arkansas fan confirmed. I think I like everybody on the chat knew that, man. But yeah, if you didn't know, yes, I am indeed an Arkansas fan. So uh, there you go. You knew it. You knew it all along. You just needed the confirmation. But Munchie, yes, I do remember Chucky Keaton. He was a very solid quarterback for Utah State and was underrated. And someone said it. Who was it? Jordan Lynch. Munchie again. So it was you again. Jordan Lynch. I loved watching him at Northern Illinois. That was a blast. And he got them to the Orange Bowl that year, or one of his years there, faced off against Florida State. And I was kind of hoping for, if Mike's still on the line, if Mike Myrick is still there, I know he's not going to like to hear this, but I was kind of pulling for Northern Illinois to win that game because I was a fan of Jordan Lynch. I wanted to see that group of five over Power 5 upset in a BCS caliber bowl game, but it wasn't able to happen. But he was extremely underrated as well. Prince, who had the better wide receiver core this year, Clemson or Alabama? Prince, not because you are a Clemson fan, but I do believe it is Clemson. And if you look at the two teams side by side and the wide receivers that each team possesses, they're extremely talented. And I think it's almost a foregone conclusion that it's going to be Clemson and Alabama in the national championship again. I think it would be a shock for anybody to say that it's not going to be Clemson or Alabama. I think both of them have a very solid chance of getting back. But Jerry Jeudy, as Commodore just mentioned, is the key for Alabama, is the top wide receiver. And for bro, you're an Alabama fan. What? Very shocking, actually. But Jerry Jeudy has all pro potential, as Eli says, but is the biggest key for Alabama wide receiver wise. Clemson still has Justin Ross and T. Higgins and plenty of other people on the wide receiver core. Not to say Alabama's wide receiver core is weak or bad by any means. It's one of the best in the SEC, but I do think Clemson owns the edge there. And I really do want to see them go up against each other again. I know people might be getting tired of it, but as I've said before on other live streams and other recap videos, it's a thing of beauty. It's not something that we get to see very often. It's similar to the Lakers and Celtics. It's similar to like the Cowboys and Steelers when they met multiple times in the Super Bowl way back when, 70s and 80s. It's like the Cavs and the Warriors as it had been the past few years when LeBron was still in Cleveland. So it's not something, it can get old, it can get boring, but it's kind of a very rare thing to happen in this day and age of sports. And it's something that we need to take advantage of and really learn to appreciate. So maybe Clemson and Alabama will once again meet in the national championship game. Maybe they meet in the college football playoff. Or maybe like a semifinal game like they did a few years ago in that Sugar Bowl victory for Alabama. But they have two of the best, the top two quarterbacks in the nation, without a doubt. Two of the best wide receiver cores in the nation, and will be two of the best defenses in the nation as well. That's why, spoiler alert, I mentioned that our top 25, our preseason top 25 will drop tomorrow. Clemson is number 1. Alabama is number 2. No shock there. So everybody else, 3 through 25, you have to wait and find out who it'll be tomorrow. But those are my top 2 teams entering this upcoming season. So Eli is saying you're tired of Alabama, but for them not to make the playoff is quite absurd. No, and that's not what I was saying. They will make the playoff. If they lose one game, I don't know who said that, but if they were to lose a game, I think it would most likely come against Texas A&M on the road, maybe LSU, maybe Auburn on the road. There are a couple games in there with teams that could give Alabama a fight, maybe a game against Georgia in the SEC title game, but I don't see Alabama losing, like you said, more than one game or maybe even one game at all. So that's something, Alabama, without a doubt, will make the college football playoff. Unless something just absolutely insane happens. I think that insane thing to happen would have to be an injury to Tua Tagovailoa, honestly, because they practically look unstoppable. And the last couple of questions here, guys, we'll wrap it up with Munchie and Street Fair. Munchie, if they make another college football game, will I play it? Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, there is one coming out pretty soon in September. I can't remember the name of it. Something related to Doug Flutie, I think it is. That game looks god-awful. And I will not play that college football game because it is not legit college football. That is not the teams aren't there, the stadiums aren't there, the fight songs aren't there. That's not college football. But if they make a legit NCAA college football game, no doubt in my mind I will play it. And there are rumors that could be happening as soon as maybe next summer if they can reach an agreement. And I would be thrilled if that could happen. And our final question of the night, Street Fair, perfect way to end things. When are schedule predictions coming out? Thursday, June 27th, guys. Predictions start. I'm not going to tell you which team we're starting off with. It's going to be a little bit different, though, than the past few years. But predictions will start on June 27th, and it's going to carry us all the way through into the start of the season. I'm so excited. I know you guys are getting excited, and we can't wait to see you guys there. So remember, preseason top 25 drops tomorrow. We might have one other live stream in there, maybe on Tuesday or something like that. If not, just stay tuned for predictions on Thursday. Continue to check out our website, thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for our expert picks. Sign up for our newsletter. Remember, there is a difference between a subscription and a sign up for the newsletter, but we hope to see you guys there as well. But guys, thank you guys for joining us on this late night, Saturday night live stream. One of the best that we've had in a very long time, or at least the best we've had since Tuesday. You guys have a safe rest of the night, and we will see you next